Okay, cool. I'm ready when you are. Let's have some GD fun.
That's right. We don't say what that actually means.
Gosh darn.
This is Basketball Friends. He is Matt Tait. I am Nick Schwerdt. Season 2. Are we going with season 2, or is this just after a prolonged absence we return? We never really established that the last time was season 1.
That's true. We never said goodbye either. So you say hello, I say goodbye.
You're just trying to do a Beatles reference, and I'm not going to allow it. The off season is it officially over? We got 2 weeks? Yeah. Less than 2 weeks till the Champions Classic in New York City this year. The Big Apple, it's the Mecca, where Kansas is going to be taking on Kentucky.
Michigan State, though.
Kansas is going to be taking on Michigan State. You didn't let me finish. Kentucky is going to be taking on
the double header.
Duke, yeah.
Now do you guys see why we took a little time off? Nick needed a break, clearly.
I'm knocking some rust off, man. Hey, we're going to get to some questions that we put out for our Twitter followers, a little mailbag later in the show. I asked everybody to just give me their biggest question for the upcoming season. So before we get to that, I will just ask you, what do you think is the biggest question facing this team, or the biggest question that you have for this team heading into this year?
There's a lot of returning talent, 70-some% of the scoring, 70-some% of the minutes, 70-some% of the rebounding, 65% of the assists, something like that. Big numbers when you look at Ochai and David McCormick and Christian Brown and Jalen Wilson, those 4 especially. Those guys have all been key parts of past teams, but they've always played a role. Do those guys have it in them to carry a team? Do those guys have that knob that they can turn up and say, this is our team now, and we're going to take this thing where we want to go? Because in the past, they've had Marcus Garrett. In the past, they had Dotson and Doak. They've always had other alpha type guys, and now it is up to them to have this be their team. It doesn't have to be all 4. I think it needs to be 1 or 2 of them. But who is it? How does it look?
You've got 4 of 5 starters returning, and it seems pretty likely that they're all going to start again this year. And what I'm going to be really curious to see is that 5th guy, the new starter who we all expect to be Remy Martin, whether that's from day 1 or by the end of the year. You don't bring in a guy who was a 3-time All Pac-12 selection to just be another dude. Nobody's going to expect him to suck. Like, I haven't heard any of those hot takes yet of anybody thinking that Remy Martin's just not going to have it this year. But there are varying levels of success, right? There's a window of options as to what he may look like. And we've seen it before, whether it's a transfer, a highly touted freshman. Some guys take a little bit longer than others to figure out how Bill Self wants you to play, learning his playbook, figuring out how to play with the guys who are already out there. And that to me is the big question. What is Remy Martin going to look like playing for Kansas? Because he got to play with a ton of freedom at Arizona State. Is Bill Self going to allow him to be that same player? Or is he going to have to try and hone him in and make him fit into what he wants to get out of his starting point guard?
The biggest thing that Bill Self is asking from Remy Martin is to be the energy guy, to be the emotional leader, to be the fiery leader, to be the guy that is always on and always turned up. And I think he does that in his sleep. Doesn't mean he has to score 20 points. Doesn't mean he has to get 8 assists. Doesn't mean any of that stuff. And both of those will probably happen a game or 2. They need him to be the emotion and the spark. And I think he does that so well. And I think once he's comfortable doing that, which he may be from day 1, he may be, 3 weeks in, it may be February, March, but once he's comfortable, I think the rest just falls into place.
What do you mean by that? When you talk about energy and being that spark, like what exactly does that entail for Remy?
Think about Ochai. Think about David McCormick. Think about Jalen Wilson. You can pretty much pinpoint the number of times you've seen those guys real emotional on the floor. They're few and far between, and that's not a knock on them. That's just, again, a testament to the fact that they've played certain roles and fit into certain spots. Remy Martin will be able to do that every single trip down the floor, after a big stop, after a big bucket, when someone else scores, when he scores, whatever it is. you expect him to yell and scream and explode. I got a buddy who's in the administration at Arizona State in the athletic department, and he told me as soon as KU landed Remy Martin, the fans are going to fall in love with him. That stuff is contagious, and when you look at this roster and what we know of it, that's the missing piece as much as anything about a floor general or a leader or an alpha scorer or any of that. It's that emotion, that spark that they need, and I think, again, he brings it.
What do you think is going to be the biggest thing that he's going to have to learn or adapt to going from Arizona State to now being with Kansas? Because that, to me, like that is a massive shift in the role and what's going to be expected of you at that position.
It's defense, right? We talked to Self about this at Media Day over in Kansas City recently, and I asked him point blank, what's Remy Martin's defensive potential? And he said when he's turned up, he can be a menace. He can bother people. He can get underneath guys. He can make it crazy and tough for opposing ball handlers, but that's when he's turned up. So again, that kind of references the idea that Self wants him on all the time and emotional and fiery and fired up. Yeah, there's going to be a feeling out process, and it may take a little time, but overall, I think it'll be pretty natural for all parties involved.
This is the first time we've ever done this, but because it's the first episode of what we have now established is season 2.
Hello.
Of Basketball Friends, we decided to open up. What was there a reference there that I missed?
Hello, goodbye. I'm just trying to get you to say it.
All right. Just keep trying. Maybe the third time I'll actually pick up on it and throw you a bone. We opened up a mailbag for our Twitter followers and, of course, loyal consumers of Basketball Friends to ask us their biggest questions. I love this. I don't know if this is supposed to be a joke or not, but I think it's the most perfect question given the setting of what we're doing. Who are all of these guys? This comes to us from Jayhawk Guy. It does make sense considering you're talking about 8 newcomers. We've talked a lot about Remy Martin, but he is just one of 8 newcomers who are vying for playing time. I don't really think we need to go through exactly who each one of these new players are, but I think it's a part of a bigger point, Matt, which is that there's a lot of fresh faces on this team. It's not just Remy Martin who has to figure out how to play alongside these new players and play for Bill Self. How does Bill Self run the offense he wants to run, get these guys to play the way he wants them to play while they're all sort of going to be learning on the fly? Oh, and not to mention, you're expected to be one of the top 2 or 3 teams in the country.
When we know who all of these guys are, we will know how good this Kansas team can be. And Bill Self said as much last week at Media Day. Again, he said on paper, everybody looks pretty good, but how quickly does it gel? How fast do they all fit together? We don't know if Joseph Yesufu is going to be a killer 6th man off the bench. We don't know if Cam Martin's going to make the jump from D2 to high major blue blood basketball. I think it's more than anything, the team as it sits today is incredibly exciting, but it's also got tons of question marks.
So I'm going to combine 2 of these questions into one because I think they are related. Who is the backup at the 5? Is the lack of depth in the front court an issue? You're talking about David McCormick, Cam Martin, Mitch Lightfoot, and then maybe to the next extent, Zach Clements. Where is sort of the hierarchy of the types of roles you expect those big guys to have?
Starting the season, I think you look at David McCormick as the starting 5, and you look at Cam Martin as his immediate backup. Earlier in the offseason, there was a lot of talk about those guys playing together some. And when Self talked about that last week at Big 12 Media Day, he said, I don't think we're going to do that very much. There are so many guards and so many wings that this team has to play 4 guards. If anything, I think the way they're going to play and the lineups that they're probably going to use alleviates any concern about do they have enough inside. I think they do. I think they're athletic all over the floor, and I think that helps make up for it. But I also think David McCormick is going to start where he left off, rather than having to take a whole half to get ready and used to what he's about.
Yeah, I'm going to give a shorter answer based off what you just ended with, which is hope that David McCormick is an all Big 12 type player and just let everybody else battle over the scraps. Because if he is that guy, there ain't going to be many more minutes to go around. Will Ochai finally be aggressive consistently in all caps there in the offense, particularly driving and offensive rebounding phases of the game? Here's the thing with Ochai that I think people need to understand. His career arc is so unique. He comes in under recruited. I don't even know if he was a top 300 player coming out of high school. Late addition, injuries. They pull his redshirt freshman year, lit the world on fire for a couple of weeks, and then sort of came back down to earth the end of that season and into his sophomore year. Last year, I mean, you're talking about a massive, massive improvement from his sophomore to junior year. He took on a much larger role. He improved his jump shot. The problem with Ochai last year was that because of the lack of explosiveness and guys who could go get the shot and go create for others and become that slasher and attacker, he was sort of a square trying to be fit into a round hole. This team just didn't have one of those guys. Well, now you hope that Remy Martin can be one of those guys. You hope that Joe Yesufu can be somebody like that. Therefore, Ochai can just play to his strengths. But in terms of being more aggressive, I don't really think that's the question, nor do I think that that's what this coaching staff is really going to challenge him to do this year.
They don't need it. They got guys now. They got Remy, they got Yesufu, they got DeJuan Harris. I think everybody will find out very soon that they love DeJuan Harris. I think he is going to make a monster jump. And everything that I've heard about him from April to today has been just a glowing review of his improvement. They do not need Ochai to be that guy. Think about what Ochai was on that 2019-20 team and ask him to be that, because he spaced the floor, he was reliable defensively, and he didn't get in the way of Devon Dotson or Doak. He just filled his role perfectly, and that's what he's going to be asked to do this year, and I think he's up for it.
Can you give me your starting five lineups? Will we start the season 4 wings and a big?
Yeah, starting 5, I think we would go with the same thing today. I mean, I think we would go with Remy and the 4 returning starters. Am I speaking for you? Is that right?
Yeah, it's like the least controversial opinion you've ever given. And you're not one to be super controversial, but I mean, if you want to conjure up a funny answer for that, you can, but it's going to be Remy and the 4 returners. I think Joe Yesufu could have like a Sharon Collins type role where there are times where he looks like one of the top 5 players on the team. He's like almost Remy Martin light. Like a guy who can sort of put the ball on the deck, go down, get your own shot, and be a sort of spark plug. And if he can be that, that is a huge boon for a team who just a year ago was really lacking in those types of players.
None of it. When you think about Remy and DeJuan and Yesufu on the floor at the same time, might not happen much, but if it does, that is a lightning bolt lineup. They can get up and down so fast, and they will guard people and make them uncomfortable. That's sort of the idea, right? You can just mad scientist this thing up and have fun with pouring a little of this in here, a little of this in here. And what does it look like? Oh, it's a rainbow. Awesome.
You just created a scientific formula for making a rainbow.
Yep. Little of this, little of that.